We're bringing a very important village of Dededo. We have, of course, joining us the Attorney General Juan Douglas B. Let's give him a round of applause. Yes, please make your way. We have some beautiful refreshments coming from our Office of the Mayor and the Vice Mayor who have gladly provided this for us. Thank you very much. Also joining us are a panel of our AG prosecutors who will have the opportunity to introduce themselves when we give you guys the opportunity, of course, to ask your questions. But enough talking from me. I'm going to go ahead and hand off the microphone to Mr. Joseph Ariola to deliver some opening remarks. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. I would like to thank the Mayor and Vice Mayor, giving all the auxiliary over there because she's up next. A little bit of safety briefing. The event of an emergency, that door is unlocked. These doors here are temporarily locked, so in the event you need to evacuate the building, it will be open. And so, again, the mayor will be coming soon, right? He's across the street. He's across the street. So anyway, I'd like to thank you all. Lots of food and refreshments. So without any further delay, Vice Mayor.
Half a day, everyone. Thank you for all being here today at the Dededo Senior Citizen Center for this important event. I am Ann S.A. Leongarel, the Vice Mayor of our proud village of Dededo, and it's truly an honor to welcome you. Before we get started, I would like to share that our Mayor, Peter Beneventi, sends his warmest regards. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, he is unable to be here with us this morning. He does send his appreciation to the Office of the Attorney General for bringing this vital outreach effort to our community. We are incredibly grateful to the Attorney General, Doug Moylan, and his team for choosing Dededo as a host village for the Protect One Another Q&A. On behalf of Mayor Beneventi and myself and the entire village of Dededo, thank you for your continued dedication to the community, education, safety, and justice. Events like this are about more than just law, they are about connection. They give us the tools and knowledge to better protect our homes, our families, and each other. From Guam Castle Doctrine and self-defense laws, to home defense, jury rights, civil liberty, and fight against meth, these are conversations that affect us all. Today is about empowerment. It's about learning, asking questions, walking away more prepared and more united as a community to engage, share concerns, and build trust in the legal protections available to us. Once again, on behalf of Mayor Beneventi, myself, and the entire village of Dededo, thank you for being here, and thank you to A.G. Moylan and his team for your commitment to serving our people. Si Diyos maasi, and God bless Dededo. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Vice Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and welcome to the podium our Attorney General of Guam, Douglas B. Moylan, for his welcoming remarks. Just give him a round of applause.
So, buenas, everybody that's here, fellow Dededo residents. I think I've lived here since the 1990, basically when I came back from law school. So this is my home village. You are my villagers, my friends, my neighbors, the people that, especially these type of outreaches, were created for. You know, to make this relevant to everybody and throughout the whole proceeding, I want to make sure that, that everybody understands, just raise your hand. This is not a formal type event. This is more to make it practical to each one of you that are here, okay? One of the things I also thought, so that it wasn't so dry, is I thought we'd have some, what do they call that, show and tell. You know, this is all about making sure that we're safe. Fortunately or unfortunately, in the world that we live in, safety has become one of those things that has been important for us, as opposed to finding jobs and getting your kids to college, things like that, higher education. Literally, and having lived in Dededo myself, we're experiencing, and we see it at the AG's office, crimes that are affecting each one of us, whether it goes from the property crime level all the way up to our safety, our loved ones' safety, wives, sisters, brothers, children in the community. And I firmly believe that it's the meth epidemic that is changing good people into people that can no longer control themselves, and who we need events like this in order to understand your rights so that you're not the target of a criminal investigation. So having said that, I want to open up with having our lead investigator, William Salisbury, to kind of talk to you about what it is we're talking about when we say protect yourselves. Normally, protecting yourselves under the law can be even using your fists and inflicting force on another individual to protect yourself. The law equally protects your protecting other people. And it doesn't have to be your family member or your relative. It can literally be your neighbor next door, or like our Good Samaritan program is showing, people that you just see being victimized in our community. So having said that, the most, I guess, common thought that comes to people's minds are firearms. So, and whether or not you choose to own or have a firearm in your possession or your home are important things that every villager should consider. I said it, I think Mr. Gibson, Ray Gibson mentioned it the other day to me, and I was just kind of like, don't get a firearm if you don't understand how that firearm is to be used, because you literally don't want to be in a situation where somebody takes it from you or uses it on you, and it's your own weapon. So I'll have William start with a little bit of show and tell here. And obviously safety is the first concern whenever you choose to own a firearm.
Good morning. Like the general said, a lot of the crime is firearm-based. What I'm going to go over is the fundamental firearm safety rules that each homeowner or any gun owner should adhere to. Nearly all accidental firearm injuries and deaths result from failure to follow those rules. The rules must be followed whenever you handle a firearm. Okay? Part of the teaching of handling a firearm is a slide lock to the rear, physically and visually check the chamber, and ensure there's no magazine within the firearm. Similar to the AR, similar to the shotgun. New users must practice the rules so they become second nature. Experienced users, people who've been around firearms, cannot become complacent. Just because you've had years of experience with firearms, that doesn't make you an expert, okay? Do not allow your experience to turn into complacency. First rule of thumb, treat every firearm as if it was loaded, okay? And what that means is if there's a firearm that's being given to me, before I give anyone a firearm, I myself check the firearm. I make sure it's clear before I give it to anyone else. If I'm receiving the firearm, I again check the firearm. It's not that I don't trust the individual who's giving me the firearm. It's because I want to make sure that once I'm in possession of that firearm, that it is absolutely safe. Even if you are certain if the weapon is empty, you must treat it as a loaded gun. Don't do anything with an unloaded gun that wouldn't be safe with a loaded gun. And what that simply means is I'm not going to be waving the firearm around. I'm not going to have my trigger finger on the trigger. Yes, it's a complete safe firearm, but how you treat the firearm is how you're going to treat it when it's loaded. Never accept another person's word that a firearm is unloaded. You must always verify with yourself. Second rule of thumb. Never let the muzzle cross anything you are not willing to shoot or destroy. Meaning, even if you're in your house, whether it be concrete or tin structure, right? If you're actually going to deploy the firearm, you must know your target and know what's behind your target. Imagine a laser beam coming out of the barrel of your weapon. Never let that laser touch anything, even for a moment, that you aren't willing to shoot. Remember, once the firearm is deployed and that trigger is pulled, that bullet, there's no coming back. It's going to go where it's pointed. Keep the weapon pointed in a safe direction that will safely stop any bullet from firing. Number 3, keep your finger off the trigger. And it also applies for left-handers, right? Left or right, doesn't matter. You keep your finger off the trigger, outside of the trigger guard, until you fire the weapon. Keep your index finger extended along the frame of the weapon until your sights are on target and you want to fire. Or if you're defending yourself or you're defending a third party, right, until you're ready and you commit to that decision of firing that weapon. This prevents you from unintentionally firing because you were startled or clutched something with your other hand. Meaning if you're in a stressful situation, right, and you're grabbing somebody to save them, let's say in an active shooter situation, while you're grabbing and moving, if that finger is in the trigger, you could inadvertently shoot someone or something. So you have to be mindful of your trigger finger. One of the most important rules when deploying a firearm. Know your target and what's beyond it. Just because I have a target in front of me, that doesn't mean I don't need to know what's behind that target. Always positively identify your target as you intend to shoot. That's number 1. Be absolutely certain of what or who you are shooting. So if there is anyone in your house breaking into your house, that doesn't mean you're just going to simply deploy your firearm. Okay? You definitely have to identify that target because it could be a family member. Bullets may travel through a target and strike something behind it. Even if you have a concrete structure, depending how thick the concrete is, or if you're shooting through a window, that bullet will continue to travel until the momentum stops it. You may miss, especially under stress. If you've never trained with a firearm under stressful situations, mistakes will happen and people could get hurt. Additional safety considerations when handling a firearm. Obviously, do not allow children or unauthorized users access to your firearm. Meaning, if you have a firearm, it needs to be properly stored, okay, away from children. We have to inform our kids that this is not a toy, that this is very dangerous in the hands of a child. Handle weapons only when sober. No alcohol, no drugs, not even prescription drugs. So if I'm teaching a class and we're on the range live firing, it's one of the questions I ask. Who, if anyone, is under any type of prescription drugs, especially if they have any type of illness? Because that could affect how they shoot the firearm, how they handle the firearm. Please use the correct ammunition. In our agency, we use manufactured ammunition. We don't use reloads, and we don't buy from third-party individuals. Our ammunition is straight from the factory. You must inspect and maintain your weapon and equipment. Maintain your weapon at all times. Because if you don't, at the time you're going to need the weapon to be used, it may malfunction. A magazine is a part of that equipment. If you've never cleaned your magazine or taken it apart, I would highly suggest you do that, because there's mechanisms in here like a spring and a follower that could also fail, improperly feeding into the firearm. Of course, you must always follow manufacturer recommendations. Now, what I'm demonstrating here is a handgun, okay? All the fundamentals apply to both an AR-15 and a shotgun. This is our office AR-15. It has a magazine in, bolt carrier forward. Right now, to me, it is an unsafe weapon, okay? So if I was given this weapon in this manner, I would first drop the magazine, check it. Pull the bolt carrier to the rear, visually and physically check the barrel. Now, to me, this is a complete safe weapon, okay? Now, the real home defense gun. This is our office Remington 870 shotgun. Right now, to me, it is not a complete safe weapon. Rack it to the rear, physically check, chamber, magazine tube is empty. Now, to me, as long as it's unsafe, all the weapons unsafe, this is a complete safe firearm. Even if I was to give it to somebody else, or if they were to give me the weapon in this manner, I would check it to make sure it's a complete safe weapon. I never underestimate any weapon when I handle a firearm. Plain and simple. And that applies to home defense. Okay, you can store your gun in a safe manner, but at the time that you need to deploy it, you need to be trained on how to properly deploy it. Any questions?
So two other items that we'd like to emphasize as well. Under Guam law, the firearm should have trigger locks. You know, we hear in the States about the kids getting the parents' firearms and things. So the idea is that whenever you have one of these things, get the trigger lock, including for the long rifles and stuff. Also, be very careful if you choose. I do not recommend chambering rounds on the firearms, and that's why you keep the breech open all the time when you hand it. For example, if I was to hand a firearm like this over to our range master, you would literally have to open it up. And the reason why you open it up is because if there was a round in here and he accidentally pulled the trigger, it could go off. So this is a sign of respect for the transaction on turning over, because you can see, and usually the round would come out on a semi-automatic. For the revolvers, and we don't have a revolver here, they're usually more reliable because these things are relying on springs. So when you do need something, whether the spring works, like it could be like a decade before you ever use some of these firearms. The revolver normally is the more reliable weapon. It's not as easy as dropping the clip and reloading it. But as my grandfather and my dad used to say, all you need is one shot. So with respect, you always have to treat these firearms with respect. Part of that is the lock. I know that if it's in the middle of the night and you've got a lock on it, it may be more difficult, but that is Guam law. They have to have a safety lock on it, but especially for the kids, because your kids know exactly where your firearms are. They're probably in your room just checking out when you're at home and stuff. But having a gun safe, you don't want the children taking these firearms. I was also talking to my range master. We were always taught in the past, even the nice thing with the shotguns, when you do that at night, whoever's in that room is probably going to run, because most guys know exactly what that means. The only danger with the shotgun is it shoots the BBs out. So the farther you are from the target, the less likely, or the more likely you're going to be shooting a range pattern, as opposed to a single firearm. So, if you guys have any questions, this is the practical side of what we're talking about. The nice thing about the firearms, it has distance, as opposed to a knife. When you get closer to the suspect or the burglar in your home, it becomes a danger to you that you're going to be overcome by that individual with a knife, machete, bows and arrows. What other type of weapons do people have? The taser, the pepper spray. I don't think the taser that shoots out the things you see on TV, I think only the law enforcement can use that. So the stuff they sell in the market right now is the personal contact taser. The only problem with the personal contact taser, a lot of them only last for 2 years in the charge. So unless you're testing it, at the time you need it, it may not actually work.
All right, if there's not any questions, give our lead investigator, William Salisbury, a round of applause. All right, we're just going to go ahead and transition to the meat of why we're all here today. Let's go ahead and welcome again to the podium Attorney General Douglas Moylan to talk about Protect One Another.
So, you know, I do mean this. You guys need to ask the questions. This is a Saturday. We're all on vacation, so to speak. This is the end of the work week, so ask the most practical questions that you guys can find. And I kid you not, in the 3 other outreaches that we've had, the type of questions that you guys ask, we never would have thought we would have a question like that. For example, the farmers, when somebody's taking their stuff in their farmland area, the questions of the curtilage always become very important. Now, to put this in a nutshell, everybody has a fundamental right to protect themselves. It's God-given, it's above the law, it's just part of being human, that people have a fundamental right to protect themselves. What happens after and what are the facts of what occurred is usually when the law and the government start to question it. We use the example like in New York recently when that gentleman did a headlock on the other individual, trying to protect the people in that subway train, and then he was charged with the crime. Shockingly, he was charged with the crime. So that's what it means. You have a right, you can exercise it, and obviously life is more important than not protecting yourself and not being around after or being injured or having a loved one or someone you know being injured. But this is what we're talking about today, the right to protect yourself and the application of what they've actually codified, okay? One of the things that we've dealt with, and by the way, from right to left, we have our attorneys, our prosecutors here. We have Lucas Wood. We have Neil Bonavita. And we have Alexander Ford. And my attaché here is Austin Fortuno, as well as Sean. So, okay guys, so we have our full team here. We want this to be helpful for you. Ask the questions as we're talking. We talked about the right of self-defense. The right of self-defense normally is you can only use as much force as the person is coming at you. The classic example would be your neighbor, you get into an argument with them, they come over to well, let's not talk about the property. You're in the street, the neighbor comes over to you, and he wants to he's really angry and he's probably going to beat you up or touch you, you can't pull out your pistol and shoot him dead on the spot. You would lose the right of self-defense if you did that, even if he was running at you with his bare hands because he wanted to hit you or something. The right of self-defense is you must use such sufficient force in order to subdue the person from hurting you, but not more force than the person that's coming at you. That's your normal right on the street, okay? So, and that applies also to another person. The law recognizes protection of yourself and protection of another. And it doesn't even talk about family member. It just says the rights that the person that's being assaulted, if you came to their aid, you also have the right of self-defense in defending that person. And what the right of self-defense would do is prevent you from getting charged, well, you from being convicted of a crime. You select the Attorney General in order to apply what I'm talking about right now. And I like using that New York example because if I was the District Attorney or the Attorney General in New York, I would never have, what's his name? What was that guy in New York's name? Penny, thank you. Daniel Penny. It's just most recently, I think the past 12 months. You saw what happened to him? He literally was charged by the government there. When you select your chief prosecutor, and in Guam it would be called the Attorney General, that's what you're selecting. Are you selecting a woke individual that would charge a person just because they think it was wrong for him to put the person in a chokehold? Or would you elect a person who would look at the facts and circumstances and then understand the situation that the person is in? So that was the first issue that you saw in the Daniel Penny situation, that the prosecutor actually charged that man. And the second problem I saw was when they had a hung jury, when the jury was asked whether he committed manslaughter, if you guys were following it. They couldn't make their minds up. 12 jurors that were sitting on that jury, they couldn't make their mind up on whether or not he was in self-defense or he unfairly hurt the individual who eventually died, right? That was the New York situation. Then the prosecutor tried to get him for the lesser crime, and the jury found not guilty on that. But for the year that he was under prosecution, he probably would have lost his home because he'd have to get a lawyer. I don't think he was eligible for a court-appointed lawyer. That's what you face as villagers in the village. How to use the law, understand the law, to use it in the sense of you're in a high-stress situation. What we call William Wack. What Wack had said earlier, how would you react in a situation where you're in a high stress? 2 o'clock in the morning, groggy, getting up, hearing noises, grabbing your firearm, if you had it, and then knowing when or when not to use it. All those things play out, and that's why when the Attorney General's office and my prosecutors look at cases, that's where all these factors have to come to the decision, do we charge or don't we charge? So from your perspectives, video cameras are usually good. You know, your recording devices. It costs us more money as villagers, but I mean, when juries actually see the video, that's usually 80% of their decision once they see that. Unfortunately, in our community these days, we all have to have all these security things as opposed to sending our kids to schools or enjoying ourselves. So one of the things we recommend is always, you know, if you can afford it and if you can set up the tech, have the video cameras. Problem is, when load shedding, the burglars know exactly when to hit your houses. So now, the next level that our senators have passed is what they call the Castle Doctrine, okay? That's what we've passed out, and I recommend you guys put that on your refrigerators or have it somewhere so that, like if you're hearing your village is being hit by burglars that are coming in the evenings, jumping your gates or just walking to your yards, this is essentially the back and front that we've provided you. These are the statutes that the prosecutors would look at. And what would happen is an event would occur, the police would come, an investigation would be conducted, they would create what we call the police report, and then at that time the police are either going to not charge or charge, and then the police reports get sent to the AG's office. If they charge and arrest you, the AG's office has 48 hours to decide whether or not we're going to open up a case. And you're not really charged until there's a case number assigned at the court. Okay? So that's the first line of defense that you have. Castle Doctrine. So the Castle Doctrine gives you special protections, like what I just said. If you're on the street, somebody comes up to you, there's a lot of rules on how much force that you can use against the assailant, against you. And that's the question. Are you the assailant or are they the assailant? And I kid you not. When it's a he said, she said, what happens when the cops come around and everybody doing that number, he's the one that started it, the other guy's the one that started it? That's what we have to decide. And let me jump to the very end, like on the Daniel Penny case. The most powerful part of what we're all talking about will eventually be each one of you sitting on a jury. It doesn't matter what I say, it doesn't matter what my prosecutors say happened or who should get charged. Who finds guilt are each one of you people sitting on a jury. So the Castle Doctrine is literally worded around a statute that protects each one of you. This isn't the protection for the defendant, the burglar that's coming into your house at night. This is your protection so that, number one, you don't get charged like Daniel Penny got charged, and the senators made this a law in Guam. And number two, that even if you get close to getting to a jury where you actually get charged by, would probably be our office, that you have a high likelihood that it's either going to be killed early, where the judge is going to dismiss the case against you, or the jury is going to find you not guilty. Okay? But our purpose here as an AG's office is to try to look at every case so that you're not put in a situation where you got to go to your banker and say, I need more money on my house because I have to pay the lawyer to keep me out of jail. A lot of people, especially if you own a home, are not eligible for a court-appointed attorney. So that means that you're going to have to pay for the attorney. So and that's why I say the bigger picture, you need to elect an attorney general that believes in your rights and not the criminal's rights. As lawyers, we have to recognize both the defendant and the victim. And who is the defendant and whether they're guilty or not ultimately is decided by the jury. But there's a lot of information in those police reports that I talk about where we can decide if a case should be charged. The statute, if you look at it, it starts under that first page there, 7.112. A person is presumed to have held a reasonable fear of imminent peril of death or serious bodily injury for himself or herself or another when using defensive force that is intended or likely to cause death or serious bodily injury to another. And then it goes down these three different categories. What basically it's saying is that you have a right in a normal situation, like the 2 o'clock in the morning, you're hearing noise downstairs or in your home, you pull out your firearm, you go down there, you see somebody in the dark moving around. This statute literally says that you can shoot that person. Okay? That's the normal situation where you're in fear that somebody is in that house, shouldn't be there. The other side that I ask you, and I know all of you are good people, remember, that could be your next door neighbor's boy that's trying to talk to your daughter at night and did not intend to hurt you. So when you're using these firearms, when you're taking the deadly force that's allowed by law, you must be very careful. And like Wax said, identify your target. Make sure that you know what you're going to fire at or what you're going to stab, shoot a bow and arrow at, whatever the case is, hit with the machete. The Castle Doctrine also provides specific protections to you that you're not going to get sued by the guy that you shot and somehow survives, that sort of thing, okay? That's part of the civil lawsuit process. Most of what we're talking about now is the criminal process, you not getting charged with a crime, but there's also the civil side that even if you didn't get charged by the crime, for some weird reason, the guy that you were keeping out of your house could literally try to sue you. The Castle Doctrine protects you so that you could move to dismiss the case and get the attorney's fees against that person that got an attorney to represent them. That's the importance of this this two-page document that we condensed for you here. Now, one of the controversial things has been the curtilage. The curtilage is literally the area around your home that is your property. It has to be your property under the law. And you don't have to have a gate or any type of structure around your house. What you do have to have is an actual no trespassing notices. I've said this to other people in the past, like how many notices should we have up? You know, where should we put it? And what should it say? Well, you got to be reasonable. Like if you're approaching your house, you have to make sure that it's placed in positions where it shows the person coming on that stay off my property. And quite frankly, people like to laugh about this. Get those notices that say that trespassers will be shot. You know, that's blatant. You come over here and you're playing with your life. Obviously the notices you have to put up. In the law, before the castle doctrine was created, the curtilages, like when the police officers come to a house, the curtilages normally was your walkway up to your house, right? Even your front gate. Officers could, you know, especially with homes that have doorbells that may not be working or not even on the gates. If your gate is open, officers literally can just open the gate and walk to the front of your house on the pathway and knock on your door to see, you know, who's there, sort of thing. This is the danger of curtilage. That is traditionally what everybody in a village expects, that especially when you don't have a gate, that people can literally walk up to your door and knock on it, right? Because they have to get your attention. Under this law, if there is a reasonable belief that you're going to be in fear of imminent danger, you could shoot the person and get away with it. So it has this positive and a negative. And as you know, God-fearing people, you really don't want to be shooting people in the curtilage. I highly recommend don't take people out, sniper them when they're coming to your door. You know, if they're at your window and they're clearly, you know, at 2 o'clock in the morning and you can see they have like a bag of something they're going to break in your house with, shooting through the window probably we wouldn't charge that. But just hope to God that person was trying to rob your house, you know. So the curtilage is always the fight on whether the person should have been hurt before getting in your house, as opposed to doing something to get in the house. Now, situations also arise when your door is open and somebody opens the door and starts moving in. That's where the castle doctrine comes in. It's one of those unfortunate situations that if you don't lock your door at night and then the person comes through that door, even in the daytime, you know, they run the risk of being hurt by you, and that would be protection. The statute does provide for that too. You don't have to break the door or the window in order to get in the house, to avail yourselves to the castle doctrine. Okay? Really, you guys have to ask some questions, and you know, these guys are yes, sir.
A handgun in your house, is it a requirement of Guam law, or is it just a recommendation that you should have your gun in a safe box in your house? The reason why I ask that is because my son who lives in Maryland, has both an AR-15 and a handgun, and he stores his handgun in a safe box with a key. Now, so my question is it just a recommendation that you have that, or is it a requirement in law?
The safety locks are required, I believe, under Guam law. I'll stand corrected on that, but my understanding is that you don't have to have a safe box. If you don't have the safe box, you have to have a trigger lock on it. Some other questions that we get, by the way, very common in the other villages, and kind of funny how there's always the common in the other villages, but you have a wife does not have a firearm ID, the husband has a firearm ID, has the firearm in the house, wife is at the house, and burglar comes in. Can she use the firearm against the burglar even though she has no license for it? and it's not registered to her name. Technically, you're not supposed to under the law because you're supposed to have a firearms ID if you're using a firearm, but you wouldn't be charged by me. That's the bottom line. You may be technically in violation because you're supposed to have a firearm, but the woman's going to say, hey, he broke into my house and I felt scared and I had to shoot him. That's an easy example. No brainer. Not going to get charged. You technically are in violation, but I always joke, you know, if any of the prosecutors tried to take that into court, you know what the jury would do with the charge? They nullify. They call it jury nullification. This is what the law, and the judge will read you the law. If you find that this person didn't have a firearms ID and used this firearm, they shall be guilty of I think it's a felony. A felony. So the wife would be technically guilty of a felony, can be charged with a felony and so forth, but the prosecutor wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't let my prosecutors do that because it shocks common sense. She had to protect herself. Yes.
How about if we both have a license and one gun, and who gets to register the one gun?
You know, it's up to you. All
But
the
can
law
we
says.
share?
Yeah, well, you know, the law says, a good question, I haven't had that one before. The good question is, under Guam law, the firearm must be registered, and the registration has to be with the firearm. You know, obviously when the cops come around, hey, this is the gun and this is the firearm ID, firearm registration. It doesn't matter who has it so long as there's permission given. So if your husband lets you use the firearms, as long as you have that firearms ID with it, a firearms ID with you, and then the registration is with the firearm, that's usually not chargeable.
Even though the firearm, like, for example, it's not in my name?
Yes. As long as you've got
He
permission.
has to give me written permission?
No, just permission.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, the police officers, when they come out and investigate anything, they're usually very, very reasonable. And then we have on-call prosecutors. They would normally call me up or call up our office, and then we would just tell them, just leave it alone. The bigger problem occurs with at night, you see the person on your curtilage, and then you fire your firearm. And then cops come over because your neighbor, you just woke them up, and they heard a firearm, a shot go off. The Guam law says you cannot discharge a firearm within 50 yards of a house. So that's very difficult when you're living in a village, because you got neighbors all over the place. So the police would normally come over, and unless you tell them that there was somebody in my yard and I shot that firearm, they could literally give you a ticket. I think it's a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor. They could actually arrest you for the misdemeanor of discharging your firearm within 50 yards of another home. Two concerns there. Number one, as Wack pointed out, that bullet's going to go somewhere. So when you shoot it up, it's going to land somewhere else, hopefully not on somebody or hurt somebody. But the practicality of your explaining to the police officer that there was somebody in my yard and I wanted to scare him away and not shoot him, they'll just look for the guy that was in your yard, as opposed to going after you for discharging your firearm in a residential area. Yes, sir.
Trespass sign on the curtilage area.
Yes.
So I need a trespass sign to cover myself better
Yeah,
when it comes to the curtilage area, or do I just, it's already my curtilage.
The trespassing sign or no trespassing sign is beneficial when you're not fenced in particular. It gives you a greater degree of protection within your curtilage, including your carport, which is considered curtilage, right? Because it's not an enclosed space. The Castle Doctrine specifically applies to an enclosed home, vehicle, or business. In order to be able to extend that, no trespassing signs are reasonably placed around the area. Whether or not you have a fence will provide an extended protection. But you must have a sign by law
Oh, by law. Okay.
in order to be able to assert that.
Is that in here in
I
the?
believe that, let's see, I don't know, which paper do you have, sir?
I have the Castle Doctrine Article 5, the two-pager, the front and back.
Oh, yeah. You can say it out loud.
Oh,
You got the quote right there.
7.112, number 3, right?
Yeah, so it's 7.112 sub A
Yeah,
and then subsection 3.
So that when
It's
it
provided the
says
property.
reasonable notice, that's your trespassing sign?
Yes,
Okay, I just want
yeah,
to make sure.
yeah.
It's somewhere
And
there.
there's actually that, right before that, there's an or. So it's, if it's enclosed with a fence, you're good to go.
Okay.
We
But
still
outside
recommend
the
putting
fence,
out a
okay.
no, putting up a no trespassing sign.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure.
I have a question. So, going back to that question on the trespassing sign, so if an individual has a concrete fence on the front and the side of their house, and they have a, we call it cyclone fence along the neighbor's side of their property, do we put a sign, no trespassing sign on the side also where the neighbor's at, along with the gate area? Just so that there are people that would jump through the neighbor's fence to get to your house. And I like the idea of putting no trespassing or you will get shot. You know, that's really critical. I think that's important.
In Texas, where I'm from originally, we used to have signs that were cutouts, metal cutouts of rifles that say, "We don't call 911." That's still not sufficient to establish the law, but it does send the same message. You're free to do that. I might want to consult with your neighbor so that he kind of understands that it may or may not apply to him, but you know, it's really about deterring folks that are coming in that might be jumping his yard. And certainly, if you're not completely enclosed, or there's one open space within the yard, then certainly pass one. You're not required to post if you've got a fence, but it's just a better practice to do that. But if it's an open space that you're concerned about entry, then no trespassing, trespassers will be shot is probably your most effective deterrent.
Sir, you may have answered my question because I'm looking at some signs. I actually have that sign that says, "This property is protected by God and my 9 mil."
I've seen those too.
So, not no trespassing. I also, the sign that says private property, keep out. Would that be sufficient?
Private property,
Keep out.
keep out.
It doesn't say no trespassing, but it's the same messages, I would say.
It's a similar message. I really can't say whether the law would interpret it differently. Yeah. But obviously, the standard is crystal clear. When it's no trespassing, you'll be shot. I don't know how much clearer you can get.
As it being jokingly, no trespassing, trespassers will be shot. Now, is there regulation as a sign, or just, even if it's just that funny statement, trespassers will be shot, survivors shot twice, So does that sign suffice, as far as castle doctrine, the curtilage?
For purposes of protecting your curtilage, I think that it would be, it's a weighted piece of evidence. And
But
even
there's
if we
no-
were going to prosecute, because we didn't feel that it was sufficient, the argument would be the discussion would be over whether that individual received reasonable notice that he wasn't supposed to come onto your property. And it's going to be fact-specific. But in those circumstances, the
So I'm
clearer
just
the
wondering,
better.
Because, if there's like a
Right.
regulated sign saying, oh, it has to
And
be
there may very
this.
well be.
So let's go to the statute, what it says. It says that, provided that the property is enclosed or reasonable notice is placed upon the boundaries of the curtilage, that the property or residence is a no trespassing zone. So it doesn't have to say no trespassing, but, like putting the, God and country and my 9 mil will take care of you, that probably would pass, Yeah, right. When the cops come up there and they decide whether they're going to arrest you or not. See, that is the most important thing to understand. After this event occurs, the police are coming over. And the police often aren't your friends because they're going to be looking at all the facts and circumstances and trying to figure out what happened, and they weren't there, right? And that's why the video I find always very important, because you're getting taken down to the police station at 4 o'clock in the morning and not having anyone to help you, and then going through the trauma let alone the public scourge, right? You're in the news for having gotten arrested. Those are the practical things that villagers have to be dealing with. So having this piece of paper, understanding it, doesn't say no trespassing, but a reasonable notice. And by the way, when the lawyers go to trial, reasonable is what you as ordinary people sitting on the jury decide. But knowing what one person's idea of reasonableness and another person's idea of reasonableness can be very difficult. Yes, sir.
And I are in the process of applying for a license and going through all the requirements. And we'll pick up the application at the ITC office. But she wants to know what kind of handgun would you recommend for a lady?
Well, you know, again, first she has to understand what type of firearm it is. One of the things that you have to be concerned about is the type of caliber. The bigger calibers have more of a kickback every time you shoot it. And you literally could lose the control of the firearm if there's too much kickback, dropping the gun or something like that. So for a woman, thank you, this is like a 9mm, okay? This is more of a man's firearm because it's the 9mm. It's a good round because it's not, if you're in a house and you're using a higher caliber, it could go through you or the person you're hitting and the person behind them. The 9mm, and the court uses this because it's pretty, normally it'll go into the person and it's not going to go out. The kickback is not that bad on this, but they also have the 380, which is more of a woman's type of round because it's the same head as this. This is a 9mm head. They call it the German short. The 380, it has less gunpowder in it. So it has the same effect of penetration, stopping power, normal stopping power. But for a woman, it's a lighter, they make it smaller normally. If you get a 380 round, it's a smaller type of firearm round. The 45 or the 357, that thing is going to not only going to fly out of your hand, but it's going to make you deaf for probably about 5 minutes. 357 Magnum. So yeah, a woman, and then the semi-automatic, again, they make small 380 round semi-automatics, but whether it's a revolver also, see, the revolvers are nice because they're reliable. They're also, they make them in the smaller sizes too. The 22 is a round that, it's like a glorified pellet gun. So, you know, it's just one of those,
So there's actually a separate, really low. Okay, so there's another 22. Yeah, so the standard one you find is the 22 long rifle. It's a, like he said, it's an easier bullet to shoot, a lot less kickback. And if you're gonna go to the range and just practice going through the motions, it's a great gun for that. But one thing that I've noticed in my research is there's a step up from that, and it's actually called a 22 Magnum. And it's like the 357 Mag, it's louder. It's same process though as the 22 long rifle. There's not a lot of kickback. It's made mostly in revolvers, yeah, which are more reliable. But the ammunition's harder to come by. So it's louder, easier to shoot, and mostly a revolver.
right. So I don't know if you guys saw our Protect Yourself billboard. So that was the typical, I got a lot of flack from the social workers about that one. Do we have that? The Protect Yourself billboard? It's outside, okay. The idea was a woman has her child in the mommy van and is in the parking lot, and a meth addict comes on him. Yeah, thank you. It's in one of the flyers there. The problem that we had, the Valentine's Day murder, those guys were probably, it was a drug-related. The woman was killed by what the police report showed was a meth addict, okay, looking for drugs. The problem with meth addicts, you hit them with the 22, they're probably not going to feel it because it's the drugs that these people are on that will affect them. I agree with Woody here. 22 long, it has more of an impact, but it's a small round. That's why the 9mm is normally the all-around used by the military and so forth. But the 380 is that same round, but not as much of a kick. Easier for a woman to shoot. So, yeah. Be careful because I'm telling you right now, there's too many people on meth on this island, and they're not normal anymore. They're stronger. I always do this in my presentations. Meth is not a new drug. It was developed by the Germans called Prevatin in the Battle of the Bulge War. The amphetamine was created by the Germans, who were the best in everything, to develop the super soldier. So they were giving it to their soldiers in order to make it so that they could get shot and they could keep on fighting. Problem is they found out that they're creating drug addicts when they gave that drug. We still have it in and even hyped up even more. So the people that you're going to be dealing with could potentially be, could take several rounds and still be moving at you. So don't want to scare anybody, but that is you talk to guys like WAC, they'll explain that stuff. Yes, sir. That's under a lot of hot discussion right now. The only downside with the firing ranges is that you got to find the right property for it, right? So the most recent one with the what's that one called? Right. But what was the name of that range again?
JTM. JDM.
Yeah, JTM. But what does it stand for? Yeah, just so I get it right. Guys, what happened there was it used to be a perfect range, but then I think it was the Munoz family, they started to develop the properties around it. They put the berm up, but the problem is you can't use long rifles because that AR-15 223 round, it'll go right to that school.
That's the common issue. So you say 12 gauge basic home defense. So being a gun owner, avid shooter, I want my wife to become proficient and
Right.
comfortable
Right.
handling.
I understand, by the way, there's another one up north. Does anyone know where that one is? I heard that there's another range.
Somewhere back road, but
Okay,
I
well, let
haven't
me
heard.
put it this way, guys. On Guam, what is the law? The law says 50 yards. So literally in the past, I've literally have gone out to open areas and target practiced. So if you have your 9mm, as long as you're in an area like Tank Farm, there's places on Guam where there's nobody around, and you just set it up so there's some sort of a backdrop. You can practice yourselves and shoot your rounds. Yeah, you know, you're going to have an issue about the property owner saying, hey, what are you doing on my property? But I mean, right, absolutely. That's the law. Here's my firearms ID. Here's my registration. Right. No, yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's where I used to do it. Just go to an open field and shoot. They also, by the way, they have those, what is that? The quail, those licenses, you can go shoot pigs and deer and stuff that they issue. You know, those are the places normally where people would go out and look for the deer or the quail. I think they have is it called quail on Guam? But I've gone out shooting with that with the shotguns. So yeah, yes, sir.
Sir, I have a question over back here first.
Oh, excuse me.
All right.
A moment. Yes, sir.
Attorney General, I'm just gonna ask, my uncle allows me to sleep at the garage of his house where they're in mainland.
Yes.
If someone attacks me, can I sue them trespassing?
Very good question. Okay, so the castle doctrine, you're sleeping in the garage of your uncle. Okay, does it have a gate around it? So I recommend you put up the no trespassing signs. So that makes,
Yeah.
because that's like a curtilage. It
Yeah.
becomes a curtilage.
I have the no trespassing allowed.
Right. So a person comes in and tries to assault you, you have the right to defend yourself, and under the Castle Doctrine, you have the right to use deadly force so long as that person is trying to attack you. Imminent peril. Also, you don't have to be the owner of the property. If you're on that property by the owner's permission, you have the protection of the Castle Doctrine.
Yeah, I have the owner's permission. That's
Yes.
my uncle.
Right. So you do have the Castle Doctrine protection, and you could use deadly force to protect yourself given the right situation.
Just to protect myself.
Correct. That would fall within the Castle Doctrine.
Thank you, Attorney General.
You're welcome. So, you know, there's some questions that were given earlier. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll take care of this gentleman.
Our AJ, Moilan sir, good morning. The officers, the staff. I have a personal question and thanks for the information about the Castle Doctrine, because I'm one of the prophet that law. One time they have an incident of my small business, Dave's Beauty and Barbershop. The guy go to my shop like 4 o'clock in the morning. And then the guy supposed to be press charged for at least completely, but they won't press charge her. It was supposed to be at least the only press charge for Bulgari.
I'm sorry, was it pistol? Oh,
Press charges, yeah.
Okay.
Like a burglary.
Oh, burglary. Okay.
Yeah. And the guy has already have 13 case before that happens. And this automatic, supposed to be automatic violation of under parole because it's still
Right.
under parole.
Right.
And they won't charge for theft property, aggravated assault with using a deadly weapon.
Yes.
And then like disorderly misconduct.
Right. Are you saying that that was what the charges were? Did they bring the charges?
Yeah, the ages are, your
Yes.
office is the one handle my case.
Okay.
And then I asked my attorney to put additional charge, the home invasion, because
Okay.
I'm stay on the, it's only one door.
Okay, so that was your home. You're living in the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, I'm registered on that area that
Okay.
I stay on the back of my business.
Okay.
And then the guy, the only press charge for burglary.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take down, and we have our head supervisor here. She's going to take your information down, and let's take a look at it to see if it should be charged further on what you just indicated.
Yeah,
That's your concern.
The attorney, sir, she told me if they accept the case, the press charge, they put additional the
Charges.
The case, the
Yeah.
charges. But I said we have the jury and we have the judge she can decide about that.
Okay.
And how come they won't charge and they only stay in the jail 2 years?
Right, so so it's already past the plea agreement or the trial? You said it's only stay for 2 years.
2 years, and now I noticed that he's under parole.
Okay.
Still under parole now, and yeah, I know your officer they gave me the papers for restraining order.
Okay, part of the release conditions probably. So, sir, on your specific one, I'm going to have the information taken down and to take a look at it, okay? And we'll take care of you in terms of the information, what happened, or if the case is still pending trial, because what we can do, we can also superseding indict it if there was things that were missed. The fact that it's your home, you would have the home invasion. But what the gentleman has pointed out is something we didn't mention yet. The Castle Doctrine applies to your home, your car, and your business. So in your situation, you could use obviously, you had the Castle Doctrine available to you because the businesses, you don't even have to live there. If a business has a person that assaults the people in it, they can use deadly force, okay? Your situation is whether the person was sufficiently charged given what happened. That's my understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, that's
Right?
why thank you for Castle Doc.
Yeah, definitely understanding this is important, okay? Something that was said over here too, on On our website, the main homepage, if you guys go to it, it shows the catch, release, reoffend reports that we do every month. What you're saying, sir, is important because for the criminal justice system that we talk about, all the AG does is we charge, you guys are our client, okay? We are typical law firm lawyers. So as my client, because you guys elect the Attorney General, whoever the Attorney General is, as my client, I bring the cases to the court under the people of Guam as a plaintiff. Victim, plaintiff, people of Guam. The defendant is the person, the suspect that gets charged by the court. But we don't set the punishment. The punishment is set by the judge ultimately once they find criminal culpability, once there's a guilty verdict, right? So that's what we've been doing in the office by publishing those reports, showing what's going on in our community when they're arresting meth addicts, possession charges, and then letting them go pending their trials, and then those guys ending up in another court case because the judge didn't put them in jail. As an officer of the court, I can't criticize the judges of the court. I can only show what's happening out there. That's why the catch-release reports are important, because last month, I think there was 18 more crimes that were committed based upon the courts releasing somebody. So in my mind, they're not hitting the target. When they're letting people out, like on personal recognizance, our office has a requirement that all the prosecutors check that file for prior arrest for meth. Once we see meth on it, we do not have any position on letting these guys out, because who's more crazy, the person on meth or the person that lets them get out on meth? These people that are on meth, they can't control themselves. They're just getting let out and committing another crime. The addiction rates are too high right now, and their inability to fix their problems, it's not helping. And that's why we're hitting the Port Authority. We're talking to the governor and saying, you got to do 100% checks at the port. We're not worried about that lady and that husband, those two that were charged coming in the airplane that had some meth in their bags. That's not what's setting the price for so low. There's so much meth on Guam, it's got to be coming in through that Port Authority. And the fact that we're not getting any response from anyone that's in charge of that port on checking those containers. Look at Long Beach, California, and Florida. It was in the news. I think Florida was just the past month. They did I think it's $500 million of drugs they found in those containers coming in through the consolidators and everything that's going on. The people of Guam need to reduce the amount of meth in our community so that the common person can't afford it. You reduce the amount of meth, the price goes up. It used to be what? $500 to $1,000 for a gram of meth? It's like $80 to $100 for a gram of meth now. It's too cheap. That's how come, I'm sorry? Well, what's happening out there is they're having meth parties and they're offering $10 a puff. So the ability, and the price right now, 6 tokes, you can either buy a 6-pack of beer or get 6 tokes of meth. Before, we weren't seeing the Micronesians having any meth problems, drug problems. They were mainly just alcohol. They get alcoholed up and then they commit crimes. You can get a hangover, you can become reasonable again after alcohol. With meth, you become like a zombie, a vampire, you name it. They lose complete sense of control. That's why those homeless encampments, they're filled with, a lot of them are just drug addicts. The families don't want to have anything to do with them anymore, because if any of you, and I've had at least 3 people in my family that have died because of meth. Once you get hooked on meth, nobody wants you because you're stealing everything. You're taking everything that the people have. My grandmother, her jewelry was stolen. Lifetime of jewelry stolen by the person who had meth in that household. So that's the problem Guam's facing. That's why the meth epidemic on Guam is a group of individuals that are no longer who we thought they were in our own blood. So all this that we're talking about is defensive. As a community, we need to find out how that meth is coming in. Jeff's Pirates Cove, do any of you guys realize, I think a year ago, I was called up, Jeff was telling me that bags of drugs were washing up on his shore down in Ipan. That's because the container ships They're breaking the seals, and they're dumping them over the side, and some fishing boat is picking them up and doing one of the skiffs down south, where it's unmonitored. They're just putting the boats in the water and going out and getting the meth. That's the type of problem we have here. And that's unfortunately why you need the Castle Doctrine now more than ever. But shooting people isn't going to solve the problem.
Hi, sir. We have some of the online questions coming. I'm just going to go ahead and read it out. One of the questions was, why can't concealed carry owners bring their weapons to their workplace, especially government of Guam workers? Leaving in vehicle is not a preferred option.
Okay, good question. We dealt with that in Maritz, was it Maritzo? No, it was in Tamuning. I think it was Tamuning. That's a good question. So you have a firearms ID, and you should have a right to carry it, right? They have exceptions. Thank you. They have exceptions in the law about where you can carry your firearms and where you cannot, even though you're lawfully entitled to carry it. And it includes places like the Guam Legislature, a courthouse, detention facility, prison, jail. You can't have that firearm if you're drinking alcohol under the influence of alcohol. Private property or business where carrying a firearm is prohibited by the property owner. So if you go to a Donkey or a Home Depot and they have a notice out front that says no firearms allowed inside, even though you have a firearm and you have the license, you can't have it. Good. Concealed fire, right. Right, right. Excellent. You see, what this gentleman's saying right here, if you guys ever have monitored all these mass shootings going on in the States, where these kids are getting gunned down, or they go into the malls and start shooting everybody that they can find, the only times you ever see any justice occur is when there's the person that actually has a firearm, is a lawful owner, and shoots back at them. These people are cowards that go out and kill everybody, and when they get shot back at, they usually run. So I believe strongly in people that have a right to the firearm, lawful, registered, and carry it, because usually they're the only ones that are going to be able to defend the targets of those mass shooters. The mass shooter, that's the problem.
I have a question over here, sir.
So I got a question concerning concealed carry. So let's say a business doesn't allow you to bring in a weapon for whatever reason. I was in a rush, I forgot it, I ran in and ran out. Somebody made a complaint. So can you be arrested for trespassing with a concealed carry?
I think it's just the warning.
Just a warning?
Yeah, and if the cops called us up,
Yeah.
if you had all the licensing,
Yeah.
you go in there, you didn't see the sign,
Yeah.
and then the owner said, or they called the cop on you, the cop would probably just say that, give you a warning, there's a sign, this guy doesn't want any firearms in there.
Yeah.
But if the guy told you 10 times, quit bringing that firearm in there.
Yeah, because there's some
Yeah.
places the sign is not clearly
Right.
posted.
It's a lot of it's reasonableness.
Yeah.
Where the AG's office is not looking at the law-abiding, to punish the law-abiding people. We're looking at those that are just, there's something wrong with them. You know what I mean? So, or especially the meth addicts, the drunkards, the people that, are not really law-abiding. You can usually tell, by the way, when you look at the police reports, you look at the rap sheets on people, and that's the thing with an attorney general's office. Even if you committed murder, the people, when they elect an attorney general or district attorney, if the attorney general says that person is not going to get charged, there's no way that they can get that person charged. It's the solemn power that the people give to the chief prosecutor. Not even the judge can tell the attorney general to charge somebody. If the attorney general believes that this person shouldn't be charged, for all these situations we're talking about, from I had the firearm and I made an accident, that's where you want the attorney general to balance everything. And that's why we opened up with that Daniel Penny case, where an attorney general decided, charge that guy for some political purpose. They didn't like the fact that he was former Marine and whatever else was going on. Should never have been charged. Yes, Joe.
I know this was asked on the last at that morning Q&A, but
another one is sending to me what to do with active shooter at the mall or any establishments.
So, and you guys can chime in if you want, but my idea is you pull out the gun and you start shooting at them. You know, that's the problem when you're in a life and death situation. I'm a strong believer in the right to bear arms. And there is no more valiant thing for a person to do, in my mind, than to protect another person versus to run and protect yourself. So that's the type when the AG's office, when the prosecutors get a police report like that, you know, what are you going to do? Either you're going to be a shooting target, sitting target, and get killed, your family getting killed in a mass shooter situation, or you're going to try to defend yourself and defend those other people. And that's how it's happening in the States. You know, when you listen to those things. What was one of the most embarrassing things that happened? Was it Columbine, the shooting of that school, when you had a school resource officer? They call them SROs. They're like police officers that are put in the schools to be there specifically for that type of event. When they found that guy on the video, he was an SRO hiding while the kids were getting gunned down on the inside. And then eventually, I think they fired him immediately, but then I think they even charged him with the crime. When you're given that opportunity to defend somebody, especially when you're being paid, obviously we as law enforcement have a duty, but when you're in that mall situation and you don't have a duty to help anybody and you take that on yourself, possibly being shot yourself, that to me is the highest level of being valiant. So Joe, that person, yeah. You would hope somebody was there, especially when you have a family member at the mall. You would hope somebody would have a firearm to defend them. Luckily on Guam, we haven't seen that yet. But who knows with the way that the world is, right?
I have one question, sir, from one of the gentlemen in the room. What areas on Guam can you not carry? Like bases, the port of Guam, fuel farms?
So if we want to be in the specific area, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 categories in which if you're licensed to carry a firearm and you're all licensed up and proper, you can be told not to have a firearm from areas like a detention facility, prison, jail, courthouse, courtroom, the Guam legislature, private property or business we just talked about that says no firearms allowed. You can't have it if you're under the influence of alcohol. Any place where carrying the firearm is prohibited by federal law, post office maybe. The Guam gun-free school zone. So around schools, they have that, I think it's 100 feet or 500 feet around a school zone. What is that? Yeah, maybe 100 or 500 feet. You cannot have a firearm there. So if you're dropping your kids off, technically you shouldn't have a firearm in the car. Any property rented, leased, or owned, controlled by the Guam Police Department, including but not limited to police stations, precinct, substation, administrative office, office space, with the only exception being the Guam Police Armory for purposes of inspection, registration, or transfer. So GPD, technically when you go to the precinct, you're not supposed to have a firearm. Thank you. That is the list.
All right, I have one question here, sir.
Yes.
Hi, General.
Hi.
Byrna pistols are very popular in the States. I'm not sure if we have that here on Guam, but if it's so, can we have it? Can we carry that around here?
I'm sorry, which one?
Byrna pistols, if you're aware of it. It's like, like this one. It doesn't need any license. Byrna, yeah.
Well, I call them, well, pellet guns are legal.
Huh?
Pellet guns, you don't have to have a license for a pellet gun. Yeah, if you pull it out, yeah. Is it bullets or pellets? Does anybody know what a Byrna pistol is? It's maybe a new, probably. You know the airsoft guns? The paintball guns? Those things hurt. Okay, so it looks like it's an air is driven by an air. It's like a pellet gun, but in the pellet, it has a pepper spray delivery. So when it hits you, it's like a paintball, but explodes as a pellet gun. Ouch.
So, is it okay to carry it
Yes, yes.
around?
So anybody have a Crossman when they were younger? Remember the old the CO2 stuff? This is like the airsoft guns or the what do they call it? The paintball guns, the compressed air. Again, those are not prohibited by law. You don't have to have a license for them. So I guess the nice lady there is indicating they're making them more refined. But as this gentleman said, you pull one of these things out and the cop sees you. Yeah, this looks like a real firearm. That's the danger that we have out there, and especially the children, the kids, when they take these things around, and you got an SRO at the school, and they see one of these guns that look like that. You know, we got to watch our kids because they could literally get shot. Yeah. Yeah.
So those are legal in Guam because they don't fit under the definition of a firearm, because a firearm defined by law has to have an explosive force behind it. So it's a deadly weapon with the use of an explosive, because that's just compressed air. Yeah. 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 So I've seen videos on these because I've looked into them for my wife when I'm not around. She doesn't feel comfortable using a firearm. They hit and then they just kind of go everywhere, and they're just in it, and it's supposed to inhibit their ability to kind of breathe and see and function. Yeah.
So one of the other things on the Castro Doctrine that we should all be aware of and careful of, you can't shoot cops under the Castro Doctrine. Okay? We have a good law enforcement officer over there. So the Castro Doctrine specifically, you have no defense. If a person that's in a uniform is in your house at night, you can't just shoot them because you're saying that the Castro Doctrine allowed me to shoot them. Okay? And it's reasonable, right? There should be a reason why the police officer is there. Right. Exactly. So you can't be target practicing with. Yeah. So, but it does require that they can't be detectives and undercover. They have to be in a uniform.
Yes, sir. I have one question for one of the gentlemen in the crowd. Are school resource officers required by law, and are they supposed to be armed?
I don't know where the legislature is with that right now, but school resource officers, I think the court is trying to put them back into the schools again. Whether they're required by law or not, there could be some civil statute that says that the schools are supposed to have them, but practically speaking, Guam doesn't have enough police officers, we don't have enough investigators. We're really running short of law enforcement on Guam. I don't have enough lawyers on Guam. Our whole team up here is from off island. These are people that heard the call of our people on Guam that we need prosecutors to keep us safe, and they came here to serve us. And I will say it black and white, the governor is dead wrong about my ability to protect you out there. I will bring these people in and pay them the salaries I need to pay them to protect us. Thank you.
Hi, General. I have a question right here.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being here, first of all.
You're welcome.
This is very important for all of us as community members, but I got a question regarding the Castro Doctrine within your vehicle.
Okay.
Now, the protection, whether it be in your property or when you're out driving on the road and you come to a business establishment and maybe, you feel that there's this individual threatening you while you're in your car, do we have the right to protect ourselves?
That's an excellent question. Okay, so let me put a little spin on this. In Tamuning, it was in Tamuning, a person gave this fact pattern. First of all, a quick answer to your question. The Castro Doctrine is only inside your car. You can't stick the gun out and whack somebody that's coming at you from another car. So the person says you got road rage, right? You have a road rage situation. if I can get this right, his thing was the person cuts you off, then somehow you guys are stuck in the traffic light, can't move. He gets out of his, or you cut the person off. You've cut this person off, and the person's pissed off in the other car. You're both stuck at a traffic light. He starts coming at you, obviously pissed off and angry, with a gun. You see it in his hand. Can the castle doctrine protect you? I don't think so. That wouldn't be analyzed on the castle doctrine because the person's coming at you. If they reach into your car, yes. But the person's coming at you with a gun, so he doesn't need to reach in your car. He's got the gun. You'd probably be having to defend yourself on a different level by saying that this was an imminent threat. I have a right to defend myself. And if you shoot him before he shoots at you, you might be charged and found guilty. See, that's the danger. And think of yourself sitting in a jury. That's why that did the same thing to us when we were listening to that question in Tamuning. So, and it can happen. You guys know road rage. They get on the freeway. They're killing kids by people just shooting people, other people as they're driving. So, but you get in a situation where you technically were the one that kind of precipitated it, and then you've got a gun in your car. That person's coming out of his car at you. You know, and in the fact pattern the person gave, you can't get out because you're at a traffic light, so you can't zoom away. The best thing to do would be to get away, because and don't try to shoot that person, because it's going to be a very, very difficult situation.
So it's only if you're in your vehicle,
Right.
you're being threatened?
This is like what happened at, remember those two meth addicts that assaulted that family in their, I think it was a pickup truck at Jonestown, Payless? It happened within the past 12 to 24 months. So a person in his family was in their car. The meth addicts were trying to rob the people that were in their car. Technically, when that person came up to the car, they could have shot that person under the castle doctrine. Because that person was, I think they were trying to take the car. Yeah, and then somehow they both ran to the village. The cops caught them. The guy was smashing his pipe, his meth pipe, so they wouldn't catch him, but they were able to get it. So, yeah, the cars are, you have a reasonable expectation to protect yourself and your family and whoever's in that car, so long as it's in the car. So they would literally have to try to open the door on you or reach in there. Once they do that, they're fair game.
Okay, well,
yeah, you can't roll your window down and then take a pot shot at them.
well, one more question, AG. So I'm living in my house. I hear my neighbor yelling or screaming for help. There is signs posted on her property. It says no trespassing.
Right.
But I know my neighbor very well. We get along very well. We lived together here for the past 10, 15 years.
Right.
And I know they don't carry a weapon, but they're being threatened by an individual inside their property. Me now, as a gun owner, being a law-abiding citizen and a good neighbor, I
Yes.
want to help my neighbor out.
Yes. So
Could I go there and see what I can do? And then if I feel that I was being threatened, I carry my weapon with me and...
you have two levels of analysis there. You have the level of analysis that the person's in need of help, right? But that's not your property. Plus, your neighbor hasn't given you the authorization to be on their property, right? So how would, and by the way, the practical side is, would we charge that? Obviously not. But even if you accidentally shot your neighbor, missed and hits your neighbor, right? So our office probably wouldn't charge it in that case. But I mean, the first analysis would be, is there any facts that support your neighbor adopting you to have the authorization for the castle doctrine that they enjoy, right? So we would probably want to read that very liberally, because I'm sure the jury, if you listen to that, would want to give them the protection of the castle doctrine because you were helping the owner of the house out. But if you didn't get that protection, because the judge would probably make a ruling on it before you got to trial, you have the right, as I mentioned earlier, of self-defense protecting someone else. And that has nothing to do with the castle doctrine. It goes to the law of self-defense and defense of others. So you're coming as a good Samaritan to help out your neighbor who's under distress. You have your firearm, you're bringing it with you, and you're helping them. And by the way, even if you didn't have your firearm, like some of the facts, they've added stuff in like you're a convicted felon, okay? But you've reformed your life, your neighbor needs help, you grab your dad's firearm that you're living in your dad's house, and you shouldn't have a firearm because you're a convicted felon. And you go over there and you help that person, protect them, and do good. First of all, the AG's office probably wouldn't charge you because of that, but you would have the right of self-defense to defend someone else. So even if we did charge you with it, the judge would read to the jury, this is what the law says, that this person should not be found guilty if they were going over to the neighbor's house in order to defend them. Once that kicks in and the jury listens to it, most jurors are just going to say, not guilty. But getting to that position where you're being charged for the good act that you had, that's why you have an attorney general's office. That's why you have that, do we charge or don't we? What are the circumstances? And that's where the police come in with the police reports, because they're the ones that are closest to the incident. Usually people are trying to tell the truth or lying on the police reports, and then they start messing themselves up because they're lying. And that's where the prosecutors, the attorneys, have to try to filter out what is the truth, look at all the other statements, and then come to a conclusion. Do we charge or don't we? You may be technical violation of the law, but there's also a practical side. And I don't like doing technical violations of law if there was a bigger good involved in it. And then there's a practical side to it. You guys are the ones that make the decisions sitting on those juries. Do I really think I'm going to win? Why would I want to waste my prosecutor's time if we know that we're going to lose? So, yes.
Just a quick caveat on the, just an addition to the issue that the Attorney General was just discussing regarding the self-defense issue that you described. Remember that in the scenario that you provided, you were going to take your gun over there to help your neighbor, right? And presumably would have some defense under self-defense if you proceeded with that gun. But please keep in mind that unlike the Castle Doctrine, the self-defense doctrine or self-defense statute says that you need to use the same proportional amount of force that the other person is using. So if that other person who's attacking your neighbor under that scenario is not utilizing a gun, maybe just hitting her, right, and you use a gun, it would be very concerning as to whether or not you might be able to utilize the self-defense doctrine. It's these holes in the law.
That's perfect. That's exactly what could go down. Now, that's the legal analysis that my assistant chief prosecutor just said there. So, but at the end of the day, it would have to be weighing everything and then making that decision if it should be charged. Because he may say that, hey, the example he is, he's just getting beat up by the ex-boyfriend or something, right? The woman, not just getting beat up, but getting attacked physically by the ex-boyfriend. You got your gun, and then you just say, don't do it, and he just keeps on hitting her. You can't just execute him like that. Yeah. So.
Sir, I have one question over here.
Yes.
Attorney General, my mother didn't leave a will on 2012. She passed away 2012. We're 6 in the family. I'm the youngest. I'm not married. And she still got $7,000 in the bank right now. Do I still have the right to get the money?
Well, that's a little bit outside our purview, but I was a private attorney as well. What I recommend is you need to check, because if she has property, you're talking about a probate question, but it's a practical question, right? Do you have to pay an attorney more than $7,000 to get that money out? They do have provisions in the law, and I think they have a bill right now, quite frankly. Senator, I forgot the senator's name, but the legislature has a bill trying to fix what you're talking about, small estates, that you don't have to hire an attorney and waste all your money. So maybe talk to us after. I'll show you the bill that might allow for non-probate, getting the asset like that out. Okay?
But my sister, my eldest sister, was willing to sign on the stuff.
right? So you got
And we're 6 in the family.
right, you got administrator issues. If there's a probate, then the administrator has to work with the judge in deciding how the money, the asset would be distributed. Otherwise, there's a practical side. If there's no probate and you got $7,000 in the bank, how do you guys get it out? and
I
clear up?
know.
Yeah. So,
She passed away 2012.
right.
The 7,000 is still in the bank.
Right. Yeah, and there's rules on that. If it has a lot of property, they may not be able to get it out, but if it's a small estate, there are rules already in the law that allow that to be taken out. But just see
We
this
have
after.
property in the Philippines. We have house in the Philippines.
Right, see, that plays on a probate attorney, whether they have to open a probate or whether they can avoid probate by getting the money distributed. I hear you, sir. We can talk a little bit after.
All right, I'm gonna field any more questions in the crowd. If not, Mr. AG.
You know, I want to thank each and every one of you. This is the practical side of the law that we all need to understand. And the fact that you guys are here, I usually say I'm speaking to the choir. Anyone that comes to these events, you are the least likely people that I want to have our office go after. It's the lawbreakers that we're having the biggest problem with. And I'm not talking about those, you know, your kid that makes a mistake, breaks the law. Our greatest problem as a community right now is the meth problem. Repeat criminals, meth addicts, non-U.S. citizens that come over here because where they came from, they have no respect for the law. Our office is deporting non-U.S. citizens along with ICE and every other way we can get these guys out. Because I'll tell you, as a juvenile attorney in private practice, a lot of these non-U.S. citizens, they're criminals as juveniles. They graduate into becoming an adult, and they're criminals the rest of their lives. And for every non-U.S. citizen that we deport from Guam, our crime rate, especially in villages of Dededo, Jigo, and Tamuning, where there's just a lot of density of people, the numbers go down. And I think candid, I didn't even know that, the numbers are starting to go down because we're targeting the repeat criminals. The problem with the meth addicts, they're zombies. Every weekend, we're getting people that are getting addicted to meth. And once they get addicted to meth, that's it. The rest of their lives, they're having to fight that drug. It's not like alcohol. Meth is highly addictive, and it's behavioral. So you get into a divorce, you break up with your girlfriend, boyfriend, you're back in meth. And once you get back in meth, that's meth kills. We're trying to find every way that we can stop people from getting on that drug, because it's not like other drugs that people have traditionally gotten in. Right now, Dr. Nine, when he did the 2024 autopsy report, he's the pathologist for Guam, 2023, the report, he said that 1 in 17 bodies that he autopsied had meth in it. That's tremendous, the number. That's way too high for a population our size. And I think in that test year, there's only maybe one that had some fentanyl on it, but it may have been associated with a pharmaceutical drug. Right now, we're not seeing fentanyl in law enforcement. The biggest problem is meth. And the biggest problem with meth is it just changes the brain before it kills you, by the way. Yes.
10 years later, I'm reading the paper, and now I'm hearing that they're doing this because they're addicted to meth.
Yes.
You know, and I said, I just couldn't believe it. First of all, they can't get a job.
Right.
And how do they afford to get
Exactly. You're exactly saying what the police department, what we are talking about. They couldn't afford it before. So what is that saying? They still can't afford it, but the price is so low.
So, it really goes to show that we do have a serious problem in this island, and I think you're 100% right that the Port Authority of Guam is the main source of these drugs coming in.
Right.
And I've always been an advocate about, hey, let's get more dogs, because the dogs are the only one that can actually sniff meth.
That's right.
And every other drug.
And the X-ray machines, I don't know if we have the imaging here, but we're turning it into the imaging. The X-ray machines and the dogs are the most effective ways of catching it. And it's the mass quantities that are coming in. So you ask the question, if the mass quantities are coming in and you got the drug dealers out there, they're getting millions of dollars. Where's that money going? It's going to the politicians.
You read about the paper that somebody got pulled over, arrested. For some odd reason, this person got pulled over for technicality on his vehicle, but then yet they found him with meth, you know,
and
anything and everything that just like, wow, why is it that every person that gets pulled over has
And what else did they find him with?
the drug paraphernalia, you know,
A gun.
and a gun. Yes.
That's what causes us the most concern. Meth addict and gun. So what does that mean when GPD arrests or pulls them over? It means that they probably were taking their meth themselves and their buddy that's in the car with them to rob another Valentine's Day murder or that Korean tourist. You guys know, I find this fascinating because I was called up when everything occurred. The Korean tourist that was killed in late 2024 or 2023, I think it was 2023. He was a nuclear scientist. His family had paid for him to, his daughters had paid for the wife and the husband to retire and to celebrate their retirement on Guam. And the person that shot him, Chamorro, cops eventually found him 2 weeks later. He shot himself. So what that told me, and I said this to other people, the person that, because I got the file right after. I looked at the file and I wanted to figure out who was this person that shot himself, and was he just your typical loser, meth addict, whole life of crime? No. He was a person that had just been in the system, had become meth addicted, had a bit of crime in his background, but he wasn't the normal criminal that would shoot himself, kill himself when the cops came to his car. He knew the cops were on him already, but instead of saying, okay, you got me, take me to jail, you know, I'll beat it with a good lawyer, this and that, he put the gun to his head and he ended it. And he was like 20-some years old. That shows the good people in our community, and we do have good people in our community. Go to church, grow up with the rest of us in school. This drug is destroying everything that it touches. And the people that are doing this, and the people that are driving that price so low that everybody can just afford it if they want to get it, are the politicians and the people at that port of Guam. They're letting it come through those containers. They're hiding the containers. Customs, the Port Authority Management, and I'll say it, the governor. The fact that she does not want to sit with the Attorney General and work out a plan to have every container inspected. This BS about 6 hours, it's not going to take 6 hours. You take the container to the consolidator, pay less, offload it, and have the dog there. Just walk it around. And they have the scanning equipment, the radar equipment. They're slow walking the big radar. You know, you run the container through it, and you look at the radar on it, the scanner, and you find it that way. Customs has it. They're not checking all the containers. So this is the type of stuff that's going on. But you ask, all that money, the millions of dollars that's being generated from it, how are they laundering it? The only way they're going to launder it is through these politicians and through certain businesses. And maybe there's a bank involved too. So that's what we're facing. We're fighting a defensive game. We can't win the war on ICE with one-by-one prosecutions of the meth addicts. That's not going to beat it. So we need to, as a community, elect another governor. Find somebody that's willing to do a full check on the places where the meth has. We're on an island. Either coming through that or through the get them through the. It's the port, and it's dumping those containers. 150 container locks every month are tampered with. And the customs director says they're not tampered with. There's just one number off on the serial number. Are you kidding me? That's tampering. They're changing the bills of lading. That's what they did in Los Angeles when the Department of Justice busted the Long Beach, the tampering that was going over there. They had their numbers straight. They just changed the container locks so that they could tell they were counterfeit container locks. What they do is When they load the container, customs puts a container lock on it. Can't be opened up until it's devanned and it's inspected with customs. Guam, they're changing the numbers, the bill of lading that it leaves California on and the bill of lading number that it comes here, and the lock they check, the numbers aren't matching. So it's happening, and they're probably opening it up on part of it's being opened up on the ocean and probably dumped over the side. And that's where those fishing boats, they go pick it up. I've heard of them on the reefs, that the divers actually go to the bottom of the reef, pick up the stash, and then bring it in, like at Jeff's Pirates Cove, those sorts of things. But we have unmonitored skiffs, as you guys know, down south. You can literally put your boat on a skiff and put it in the water in the trailer on certain places on Guam. And there's no conservation officers watching it. Nobody. So it takes National Guard, the governor, and somebody with the will to break this racket up. And it's the money that's funding it. The millions of dollars people are getting paid off. They got to launder their money, right? You can't just, and where's the tax auditors for these businesses that we know? Why aren't they doing audits of the business? So this is where we're in a situation now that we have to talk to you about defending your own homes against what probably is going to be a meth addict doing the same thing that he did to the Korean tourist, to the same thing they did to the Valentine's Day murderer. The trial that we just lost, that one that the AG's office we were prosecuting, all the 8 murders of 2024, all drug-related. You've got the drug addict on innocent victim, Valentine's Day, the woman, and the Korean tourist. Then you have the drug addict on drug addict crimes, the drug addict on meth dealer crimes. And quite frankly, when I see meth all over the case, what are you going to do? They're killing themselves, but they're taking us with them. And that's what's disconcerting. That Valentine's Day murder, if you look at the police report that the police did a great job on, went to Payless, our own Payless in Dededo. They were in the car watching the villagers on who looked like they had money. They followed the persons that had money, but they didn't get somebody until they went to Mooning. They staked out that place next to where the woman was killed. They identified a Japanese, I think it was Japanese or Oriental woman. They followed her to the condo. There was a whole day, by the way. Meth addicts looking for money, all high. 3 people were involved. They followed her to her condo, and the reason why they didn't go to her condo unit and probably attack her in her own condo unit was because the guy that was bush cutting was watching those guys, and they looked suspicious. So after that, they eventually found the Bontai lady. So, this is what's going on in our villages. They're staking out all these nice places, but what are they looking for? They're looking for money. Nice car, a woman with jewelry on, and what? We're hearing stuff. They're going to the houses, taking your coolers. They're taking anything that they can take. That shows how crazy these guys are. They're no longer thinking right. They're not looking for high value to break in your house, take some jewelry. They're looking what's on your house. The example, Mauricio, the lawnmower example. Can I shoot the guy that's taking my lawnmower out of my curtilage, even though I have no trespassing signs up? No, you can't. So it's the person and you guys should be aware of that. So a person comes up to your house and you see them scurrying away with your lawnmower. You can't take out the gun and shoot them in the back while they're running out. There's got to be some plausible, imminent fear of approaching or in the house. But if they're in your tool shed and they're running away in their car, you can't shoot them. By the way, this castle doctrine includes kidnapping. So for whatever reason, they have your loved one with them as they're moving away, they're fair game. They can be shot at any point. And in my mind, even if you catch up with them at Payless. So, but this is the type of fact patterns that are no longer, it only happens in this part of Dededo, Swamp Road. They're coming into the main village of Dededo. They're staking, because we got the mall. We've got a lot of different places that, but they're in their cars watching us. So, yeah. Sad but true.
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank you and your staff and for being here and for what you say. You're very informative, and what you say is very true. But I have a question on handgun.
Yes.
What is the Guam policy regarding open carry? In other words, a weapon that is visible. You can see that this guy is carrying a weapon. What is the policy on Guam, please?
Guam has two different concealed permit and the non-concealed permit. The open carry, I gotta take a look at that. Usually the people that are wearing it on them, that's a concealed firearm. If they're
I have a concealed weapon carry, and I do carry mine, but usually I carry a coat.
no, if you have a concealed firearms permit,
Yes.
you can carry it on the outside. You can be the
Can
old
be
Western.
It can be visible?
Yeah.
And it's not against any policy or rule reg?
Can you check that? I think it is.
So in reference to your question, sir,
Yes, sir.
if you have a non-concealed, that's exactly what it means. You
Mine-
cannot conceal your firearm.
Mine say
Yes,
conceal.
if you have a concealed firearm,
Right.
you can do either or.
Oh,
You can do an open carry by law because
Right.
you have a firearms ID,
Right.
and you can conceal the firearm because you have a concealed firearms ID.
okay. As a professional, all of you, what would you recommend? Usually, I hide it. I don't want to cause any hate and discontent.
It would be personal preference.
Okay, I see.
For me, I would rather hide my
Yeah,
firearm.
that's what I do.
Less people watching me.
Right, right.
Versus if I'm open carry and we're in the mall,
Yeah,
I can almost guarantee you 99% of the people,
yeah,
while eating or shopping, they're gonna be staring at me.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, thank you.
Basically, makes people uncomfortable when they see a firearm. Yeah, I was going to say the practical side. We had all the prosecutors can carry firearms. They're considered peace officers like police officers. But I had a new prosecutor from, where's he from? Oh, Virgin Islands. We just hired him. Okay, yeah, St. Thomas. So he was keeping his firearm in his, literally like you, but he didn't have a holster. But he kept it on the outside. And I had a bunch of women in the office becoming very uncomfortable. So it makes people uncomfortable. Rightfully so, but at the same time, yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
going back to the castle doctrine, if an individual, you're at home, somebody broke into your car, and they're rummaging through your car to steal something, you can't just go shoot them, right? You have to be in the car, and they actually have.
Let's put the practical side. That's a good. So you're a homeowner. You got somebody that's in your garage going through your car. Think about how the police report's going to look. So you want to make sure that the facts that the cop's going to listen to as he comes over and he sees a body on the ground is sufficient. So I would say that, and in reality, I would say you can't just go up to him and say you broke it in the wrong car, then whack. If he turned around and did that number, and then you shot him, and this is assuming the curtilage, okay? You got to make sure it's the curtilage because the castle doctrine only applies to the house and the curtilage if curtilage is properly. So let's just assume that you had your curtilage notices up, and you find this guy in your car rummaging. That's the lawnmower example down south that we got in Mauricio. It's not like it's not like the fact pattern. It's dark, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then you shoot because you see somebody in your kitchen. You've said this guy was in my car, officer, and because he was in my car, I decided to shoot him. Yeah. You gotta have the proper facts in the situation that the guy turned around and tried to lunge at me or something like that. Right. So that's where it makes it a little bit difficult. And you're going to get, our society has people that are softer and more compassionate to the point that they're probably going to be a victim. And you got people that are, you know, reasonable, like everybody in this room is. And then you got people that are just kind of like the fanatics, you know, the bunker mentality people. Always think about how a jury would view what's going on, the reasonableness, and you're usually going to be pretty good on how things play out. Neil just mentioned that word that we're talking, imminent fear. Yeah. So if he turns around and jerks at you like that, and you thought that it was a gun, but it was really your pencil he had in your hand, you know, and you shot him, that's what it says in the police report. So looks like you were trying to defend yourself. Right, right. And that would be the carjacking, but you wouldn't be in the car in that fact pattern, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, unless you guys had any other questions, we are always available at the AG's office for you. You can email us. We have the emails and stuff. And I appreciate your coming out to see us today.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. AG, quick,
We have,
just quick announcement, please.
There's food over there, and there's giveaways over on the left side.
We have a husband and wife team back there who are actually NRA certified instructors. So if you're contemplating on getting a firearm or everything, you may talk to them. They are the owners of First Shots.